My wife lied to me to hook up with her brother-in-law. I only found out when they got into an accident, so I served her divorce papers while she was in a hospital bed. Hey Reddit, buckle up, because this one's going to make your last relationship look like a Hallmark movie. I found out my wife was sleeping with her sister's husband because a nurse figured I should know the name of the guy with her when their car wrapped around a telephone pole at 2 in the morning. That one sentence blew up 2 marriages before the sun came up. My name is Dante, 33 male. I work as an operations coordinator for a regional freight company, which is a fancy way of saying I'm the guy who fixes everything when trucks break down, shipments get lost, and warehouse managers start losing their minds at 3 a.m. The job pays decent, and it trained me to stay calm when everything goes sideways. Celeste and I had been together for 6 years, married for 4. She worked in pharmaceutical sales, which meant a lot of time on the road. Conferences, client dinners, overnights in other cities. She had an answer for everything, a smile that could disarm anyone, and this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. I thought I was lucky, thought I'd found someone who actually wanted to build something real. Her older sister, Lucia, had married a guy named Graham about 8 years back. They had a nice house in the suburbs, 2 kids aged 6 and 4, the whole domestic package. Graham worked in commercial real estate, which he reminded everyone about constantly. The guy couldn't order a sandwich without mentioning his latest deal, or his newest client, or how the market was treating him so well. Always wore expensive watches, always drove fancy cars. I found him exhausting, but he was family, so I nodded along at holidays and pretended to be impressed when he talked about cap rates and leveraged buyouts. Lucia seemed happy. The kids were great. That's what mattered. That Friday evening started normally enough. I'd pulled a brutal shift dealing with 3 trucks that broke down on the same route, which meant 10 hours of phone calls and creative problem solving. All I wanted was food, a shower, and my couch. Celeste was already packed when I walked in. Overnight bag by the door, keys in her hand. She gave me this apologetic look and said she was driving up to spend the weekend with Lucia. Said Graham was traveling for work again, and Lucia was overwhelmed handling the kids alone. I didn't think twice. Sounded like something a good sister would do. I helped carry her bag to the car, asked if she needed gas money. She laughed, kissed my cheek, and told me I worried too much. Promised to text when she arrived. I watched her pull out of the driveway, waved like a good husband, and went inside to microwave some leftover pasta. She texted around 8, said she'd arrived safely. Sent a photo of what looked like Lucia's living room. I sent back a thumbs up and passed out. Around 2 in the morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. The woman on the other end had that calm, measured voice medical professionals use when they're about to drop a bomb on you. She confirmed I was Dante Ortega, confirmed I was Celeste Ortega's husband. Then she told me my wife had been admitted to County General following a vehicle accident about an hour ago. Stable, but injured. I needed to come in. My stomach dropped. My wife was hurt. Could have died. Then the nurse added something that completely messed with my head. She told me my wife wasn't alone in the vehicle. The other passenger was a Mr. Graham Whitmore. He'd also been injured and was being treated in the ER. I didn't respond for what felt like a full minute. Just stood there in my dark living room, phone pressed to my ear, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. Graham Whitmore, my wife's brother-in-law, Lucia's husband, the guy who was supposedly on a work trip, in a car with my wife, at 2 in the morning, on a highway that led nowhere near Lucia's house. The nurse asked if I was still on the line. I managed to say yes. She asked if I'd be coming to the hospital tonight. Said Celeste was asking for me. Said she seemed confused and scared. I thanked the nurse for calling. Said I appreciated the information. She started to add something about Celeste needing family support, but I hung up before she finished. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and stared at the wall while my phone buzzed with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. My wife had lied about visiting her sister. Her sister's husband had lied about a work trip. Both of them had somehow ended up wrapped around a telephone pole together in the middle of the night. The math wasn't complicated. I wasn't going anywhere until I understood exactly what I was dealing with, and exactly how badly I'd been played. I waited until 6 in the morning to make the call. Figured Lucia would be awake by then, probably dealing with breakfast and getting the kids ready for whatever Saturday activities they had planned. She answered on the second ring. I kept my voice casual, asked if Celeste was up yet, if they'd had a good night, if Lucia needed anything. Long pause. She sounded confused. She said Celeste wasn't there. Hadn't seen her in almost 2 weeks. Asked if everything was okay, because I was acting weird. I kept my voice steady. I asked where Graham was. Said I'd been trying to reach him about something and couldn't get through. Just wanted to make sure he was okay. Another pause. Then Lucia said Graham was in Denver on a work trip, had left Thursday evening, wouldn't be back until Monday. Some big commercial deal he'd been working on for months. Denver? Right. I thanked her. Told her everything was fine. Said I must have gotten my wires crossed. Hung up before she could ask more questions. So there it was. Double confirmation. I called the police non-emergency line around 8 and asked where vehicles from overnight accidents got towed. They gave me the address of an impound lot on the east side of town. Showered. Put on real clothes. Drank coffee that tasted like motor oil. Drove to the impound lot around 9. The car was in the back corner, near a chain-link fence covered in dead weeds. Even from a distance, I could tell it was bad. Up close, it was worse. The front end crumpled like a crushed soda can. The windshield shattered. Dried blood on the headrests, the dashboard, the steering wheel. Glass everywhere, glittering in the morning sun. The driver's side door was bent inward at an angle that made my stomach turn. I walked around the wreck slowly, photographing everything with my phone. According to the incident report posted on the officer's clipboard, they'd been heading southbound on Route 12 around 1:45 a.m. Speed estimated at 70 in a 45 zone. Celeste had been driving, lost control on a curve, hit a telephone pole on the passenger side, spun twice before landing in a drainage ditch. The responding officer noted it was a miracle anyone survived. Another foot to the left and Graham's side would have been completely crushed. The overnight bag was still in the back seat. Celeste's bag, partially unzipped with clothes spilling out. I opened the rear door and pulled it toward me. Lingerie. There was a smaller toiletry bag too. Protection. Massage oil. Scented candles. Travel size everything. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This wasn't a mistake made in a fog of bad judgment. This was planned, down to the last detail. I photographed everything. The luggage. The contents. Every incriminating item. Then I noticed something wedged between the front seats. A leather portfolio. Graham's initials embossed in gold on the corner, because of course they were. I pulled it out and flipped through it. Mostly business cards and real estate flyers. A few handwritten notes I couldn't make sense of. But one thing caught my eye. A business card from a loan officer at Pacific Trust Mortgage, with my home address scribbled on the back in Graham's handwriting. My address. On a mortgage company business card. In Graham's folder. I didn't know what that meant yet, but I photographed the card, put everything back exactly where I'd found it, and walked back to my truck. The smart move was to start documenting, build a complete picture before making any decisions. I needed help. Someone who could think clearly when I couldn't. Someone who'd help me turn raw information into a plan. I called my buddy Zach. Zach and I had worked together at the freight company for going on 7 years now. Former Marine. I told him about everything. The hospital call. The double lie. The impound lot. The business card from the mortgage company with my address on the back. When I finished, he took a long sip of his coffee, set down the mug, and gave me 4 words that stuck with me. Document everything. Trust nothing. We spent the next 4 hours building a timeline. Celeste and I had separate phone plans through our employers, but I knew her login credentials from when I'd helped her set up autopay a couple years back. Pulled up her account on my laptop and started downloading records. The pattern was obvious once you knew what to look for. Hundreds of calls to Graham's number over the past 6 months. Some just a few minutes, some lasting over an hour. Heavy clusters on Tuesdays and Thursdays around noon. Her lunch breaks. She'd been calling her sister's husband while I ate sandwiches at my desk and thought about what we'd have for dinner. The texts were worse. The phone company only had metadata, not content, but the sheer volume told its own story. Sometimes 40 messages in a single day. Sometimes at 2 in the morning when she was supposedly asleep next to me. I remembered those nights. She'd get up saying she couldn't sleep. Said she was going to get water or read in the living room. Sometimes I'd find her on the couch in the morning, phone face down on the cushion beside her. I cross-referenced the call logs with her work calendar. Every overnight trip she'd taken in the past 6 months matched with heavy phone activity to Graham. Every conference, every client dinner, every weekend with girlfriends. There was one week in April where she'd supposedly been at a pharmaceutical summit in Houston. That week showed 50 calls to Graham's number and exactly 0 calls to anyone in the Houston area code. Zach found Graham's social media and started cross-referencing. Turned out Graham had posted a photo from a steakhouse in Houston the exact same week. Different account, different platform, but same city and same dates. I moved on to credit cards. Celeste and I kept our finances mostly separate, just combined for household expenses. I hadn't looked at her personal statements in years. Turns out she had a credit card I didn't even know about. Statements going to her work email. I only found it because her phone account included a list of linked financial services. The charges told their own story. Hotel rooms I'd never been to. Restaurants in cities where no conferences existed. A couple's massage at some boutique spa. Jewelry purchases I'd never seen her wear. 7 months minimum. This had been going on for at least 7 months. 7 months of looking me in the face every morning and pretending everything was fine. 7 months of coordinated lies and shared calendars while I thought we were building a real life together. Zach pulled up public records on Graham's real estate company. It took about 15 minutes to find something interesting. Graham Whitmore Holdings, LLC had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection 9 months ago. Public record. His business was drowning in debt from bad investments and a commercial project that went sideways during the downturn. Suddenly, the timeline made sense. Graham's empire collapses. Graham needs cash. He starts an affair with his wife's sister, who happens to be married to a guy with a fully paid-off inherited house worth around $320,000. That mortgage company business card with my address on it suddenly looked a lot more sinister. I didn't know exactly what they'd been planning yet, but I had a bad feeling about it. Zach told me I should freeze my credit right away. Put alerts on all accounts. Check with my bank to make sure nothing had been started without my knowledge. Around 3 in the afternoon, Zach looked up from his laptop and asked if I'd told Lucia yet. I hadn't. Kept putting it off, dreading that conversation more than anything else. Lucia didn't deserve this. She'd built her whole life around Graham and those kids. Trusted him completely. Same way I'd trusted Celeste. I sent her a text asking her to call when she had a few minutes alone. Told her it was important. Added that it wasn't good news. She called within an hour. Said Graham still wasn't answering his phone. Said she was starting to worry because his hotel in Denver had no reservation under his name. I took a breath. Told her there was no Denver trip. Then I told her everything. The hospital call. The crash. Graham in the car with Celeste at 2 in the morning. The overnight bag with its carefully packed contents. The 7 months of phone records. The matching travel dates. All of it. Silence for a long time. She asked if I was sure. I told her I had photos. Told her I had phone records and credit card statements and travel calendars. Told her I'd seen the car with my own eyes. More silence. Then she said things had been off with Graham for months. Late nights he couldn't explain. Secretive phone calls he'd take outside or in the garage. New clothes and watches she didn't remember buying him. Charges on their joint card that didn't make sense. She'd told herself she was being paranoid. Told herself no man would do something that messed up. Sleep with his wife's own sister. Who does that? Graham, apparently. I told her I'd thought the same thing about Celeste. Told her we'd both been played by people who were supposed to have our backs. She asked what I was going to do. I told her I was hiring a divorce attorney in the morning and locking down every financial account I had. She said she needed time to process. Figure out what to tell the kids. How to handle Graham? I understood. Told her to call if she needed anything. After we hung up, Zach and I spent another 2 hours organizing everything into folders. Physical copies, digital backups, cloud storage he set up under an email Celeste didn't know existed. The affair evidence was solid, but that business card with my address kept bugging me. Graham was broke. His business was going under. And somehow my house had ended up in his folder. Whatever they'd been planning, the car crash had interrupted it. I just didn't know how close I'd come to finding out the hard way. Monday morning, I started making the calls Zach had suggested. The first call was to my bank. I asked to speak with someone about my account security. Got transferred twice. Finally ended up with a manager in the fraud department. She asked me to verify my identity, which took about 5 minutes. Then she asked if I was calling about the HELOC application. I felt my stomach drop. What HELOC application? She explained that an application for a home equity line of credit had been started on my property 4 weeks ago. Listed me as the primary borrower. Listed a Celeste Ortega as co-borrower. The requested amount was $85,000. My house. The house I'd inherited from my grandmother. The house Celeste had no legal claim to whatsoever. The manager kept talking. Said the application had been flagged for additional verification because the co-borrower's name didn't appear anywhere on the property deed. They'd been trying to reach me for 2 weeks to confirm authorization, but the contact number on file had been changed to one that kept going to voicemail. Changed. She knew my info. We'd done paperwork at that kitchen table 100 times. I'd never thought to hide anything from my own wife. I asked her to freeze everything immediately. She did. Then she mentioned something else. Someone had also requested an address change on my account around the same time. Tried to redirect all my statements to a P.O. box in a town I'd never heard of. If the application had gone through, I never would have seen the statements. Never would have known until the debt collectors came calling. I thanked her, hung up, and immediately called my credit card company. 40 minutes on hold listening to the worst jazz fusion ever recorded. I can reroute 3 broken down trucks across state lines faster than these people can answer a phone. At one point, the sax started going off on some solo, and I almost confessed to crimes I didn't commit just to make it stop. Finally got through to a representative who confirmed someone had attempted to add Celeste Ortega as an authorized user on my personal credit card 3 weeks prior. The request had been flagged because the social security number provided didn't match anyone on the account. Same time frame, same pattern, same person. I froze everything. Put fraud alerts on all 3 credit bureaus. Changed every password. Then I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the mortgage company business card I'd found in Graham's folder. Pacific Trust Mortgage. The same company that had just tried to process an $85,000 HELOC on my grandmother's house. That was the plan. Zach came over that evening and helped me organize all the new documentation. Fraud alerts, credit freezes, bank correspondence. We added it to the timeline. The picture was getting clearer and uglier by the hour. Graham needed money because his business was going down the drain. Celeste either got roped in or came up with the idea herself. Either way, they'd been working together for months to set up a major cash grab. My grandmother's house was the target. They just needed me out of the way long enough to drain the equity and disappear. Zach asked if I thought Celeste was planning to leave me eventually. I said I didn't know. Maybe she was planning to take the money and file for divorce. Maybe she was planning to take the money and stay married while Graham dealt with his own situation separately. Maybe they were planning to run off together and leave both me and Lucia holding the bag. It doesn't matter now. They weren't planning anything anymore. Wednesday morning, I drove downtown and met with a divorce attorney named Pete. I showed him everything. Phone records, credit card statements, HELOC documents, fraud alerts, the organized timeline Zach and I had built over 2 days of digging. Pete reviewed it all without any visible reaction. It took about 90 minutes. When he finished, he looked up and nodded once. He said I had one of the cleanest separate property cases he'd seen in years, plus solid grounds for a fault-based divorce with fraud implications. He laid out the strategy. The house was separate property, inherited before marriage, never mixed with marital assets. Celeste had no legal claim to it under state law. The attempted HELOC was evidence of financial fraud. The affair gave grounds for fault-based divorce, which would affect how assets got divided. Pete said he could have papers ready by Friday. Asked if I had any preferences on how Celeste should be served. I thought about it for a long time. Lucia had called me that morning. Said she was going to the hospital Thursday to confront Graham. Said she couldn't do it alone. Asked if I'd be there. If I was going anyway, I figured I might as well make the trip count. I told Pete to have everything ready by Thursday afternoon. Told him I wanted her served at the hospital, in person, with witnesses. He just wrote it down and said he'd arrange a process server. By Thursday, Celeste had been moved out of the ICU. Broken ribs, fractured collarbone, concussion, stitches across her forehead. She'd be in the hospital another week minimum. Graham was in worse shape, shattered pelvis, internal bleeding, some kind of spinal compression issue, months of recovery ahead, might not walk normally again. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Celeste's parents had been calling me nonstop since the accident. Her mother cried about how scared Celeste was, how she kept asking why I hadn't visited, how I was being cruel and vindictive for no reason. Her father left voicemails calling me cold, heartless, and unworthy of their daughter. One rough patch. That's what they called it. Every family goes through challenges. Marriage requires forgiveness. I ignored the voicemails. Didn't respond. They didn't know about Graham yet. Lucia wanted to be the one to tell them. Wanted to see their faces when they realized their precious son-in-law had been sleeping with their other daughter. Thursday afternoon, I drove to the hospital with Pete's process server following in a separate car. Guy named Raymond. Lucia met me in the parking lot, dark circles under her eyes, hands shaking when she reached for a hug. She told me she'd already been to see Graham that morning. Walked into his room, looked him in the eye, and told him she knew everything. He denied it at first. Said there must be some misunderstanding. Said Celeste was like a sister to him. When Lucia brought up the phone records, he switched tactics. Said Celeste had seduced him. Said she'd been coming on to him for months and he'd finally caved. When Lucia brought up the HELOC documents, he stopped talking entirely. She'd left without saying another word. Said she'd filed for divorce that afternoon. Her attorney was already drawing up custody arrangements. Now it was Celeste's turn. Celeste was sitting up in bed when we entered. Bruises across her face. Arm in a sling. Hospital gown hanging off one shoulder. She looked smaller. When she saw me, Her whole expression changed, relief washing over her face like I was the answer to every prayer she'd been whispering for the past 5 days. Dante. Her voice cracked on my name. You came. I've been asking for you for days. I didn't get why you weren't here. I was so scared. The nurses wouldn't tell me anything. I thought something had happened to you too. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. I thought you'd never come. She kept going, tears starting to form. I know I have stuff to explain. I know this looks bad, but it's not what you think. Please just let me explain. Everything got so messy and I didn't know how to tell you and… Celeste. I cut her off. Stop. She blinked, confusion replacing the desperate relief. Raymond stepped forward from behind me. Professional. Calm. He confirmed her full legal name. Confirmed she was Celeste Marie Ortega. Then he handed her the envelope and said the formal service statement. She stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Then she looked up at me. Then at Lucia standing in the doorway. What is this? Her voice had changed. Harder. Lucia answered before I could. I know about Graham. About the hotel rooms. About the 7 months of calls and texts. About the HELOC application on Dante's house. About the credit card fraud. About all of it. Celeste's face went through about 6 different expressions in 3 seconds, finally landing on wounded innocence. That's not… You don't get it. Graham manipulated me. He told me how unhappy he was. I never meant for any of this to happen. I was confused, and he took advantage of… You packed lingerie. I kept my voice flat. You rented a P.O. box to redirect my mail. You tried to add yourself to my credit cards. You started a home equity loan on property you have no legal right to. This wasn't confusion. This was planning. Celeste opened her mouth to respond, but Lucia cut her off. You're not my sister anymore. The words just hung there. Celeste's face crumpled. She started crying and reaching for Lucia, saying her name over and over, begging her to listen. Lucia turned and walked out without looking back. I followed. Celeste's voice echoed down the hallway behind us. A nurse hurried past us toward the room. I didn't turn around. Her parents called me that night, both of them on the line, furious beyond words. Said I'd ambushed their injured daughter in her hospital bed. Said I'd turned Lucia against her own sister with lies and manipulation. Said they'd always known there was something cold about me and now they had proof. I told them to ask their daughter about Graham, about the HELOC, about the 7 months of documented lies. They said I was making excuses. Said Celeste would never do something like that. Said I was trying to justify abandoning my injured wife. I told them to call Lucia and ask her directly. Then I hung up. 2 days later, Lucia filed for divorce from Graham. Celeste's parents stopped calling me after that. Guess they finally got the full picture. The next 4 months were basically watching 2 lives fall apart in slow motion. Celeste came home from the hospital and moved in with her parents. I'd already changed the locks on my grandmother's house and had a conversation with the local police about what counted as trespassing. She showed up anyway, twice the first week, 3 times the second. My neighbor Gene helped more than he probably realized. Retired electrician in his 60s, had security cameras covering his entire property, plus half of mine because he was paranoid about package thieves. The man had 7 cameras for a 3-bedroom house. Said he also didn't trust the squirrels, which I'd assumed was a joke until I saw the dedicated squirrel tracking angle on camera 4. When I mentioned the situation, he started logging every time Celeste's car appeared in the driveway. Dates, times, duration, license plate, everything. The 3rd week, Celeste walked up to the front door and knocked for 45 straight minutes. Gene had it all on camera. I was at work, but he called me to let me know she'd left a note on the door. Pete sent her attorney a cease and desist letter. She ignored it. The 5th week, she showed up around midnight. Gene's cameras caught everything. She tried the front door, tried the back door. Then she went to the garage and started yanking on the handle like she could force it open. When that didn't work, she kicked the bottom panel hard enough to dent the metal. Stood there for another 10 minutes, yelling at the house before finally driving off. After the garage door incident, Pete filed a formal no trespass order with the county sheriff's office. Celeste was served notice that any future presence on my property would result in criminal charges. Her attorney acknowledged receipt. The legal paper trail was airtight. I told Jean if she ever showed up again, don't argue with her. Just call. The visits continued anyway. Sometimes she'd just sit in her car across the street and stare at the house. Sometimes she'd walk past on the sidewalk, slow enough to make sure I noticed. I added all of it to the documentation file. The divorce proceedings moved faster than expected. Pete was thorough and aggressive. He filed citing fault-based grounds, attached evidence of the affair, and included the fraud documentation, also filed a motion to exclude the inherited house from asset division, citing separate property laws and documented fraud attempts. Celeste's attorney tried to fight everything. Guy named Hartwell. He claimed the house was marital property because we'd lived there together. Claimed the HELOC inquiry was a misunderstanding. Claimed Celeste was a victim of manipulation by Graham and shouldn't be held responsible for his schemes. Pete took apart every argument. He presented the phone records showing Celeste started most of the calls to Graham, presented credit card statements in her name, showing she'd paid for half their hotel rooms, presented the P.O. box rental in her name, the credit card authorization attempt in her name, the HELOC application with her signature. This wasn't manipulation. This was an equal partnership in betrayal. The judge reviewed everything over 2 sessions. Older woman with reading glasses and zero tolerance for excuses. She asked pointed questions about the HELOC timing, about the mail redirect, about why Celeste's name appeared on so many fraudulent documents if she was supposedly just an innocent victim. Celeste's attorney didn't have good answers. Final ruling came down in the 3rd session. The house was separate property. Fraud attempts counted as wasting marital assets. The judge ordered a 60-40 split in my favor, plus Celeste covering her own legal fees. Celeste actually laughed when she heard the ruling, said I'd stolen her best years and now I was stealing her future too. The judge reminded her that attempting to steal $85,000 from a spouse's inherited property generally doesn't get you a lot of sympathy from the court. Meanwhile, Lucia's divorce was getting messier. Graham tried every trick in the book, claimed bankruptcy meant he had nothing to divide, claimed his injuries from the accident prevented him from working, claimed Lucia was trying to turn the kids against him. Lucia's attorney dug into his finances and found accounts in his mother's name. Cash transfers made weeks before the crash. Cryptocurrency purchases that didn't appear on any disclosed statements. Graham had been setting up his exit for months. He was going to drain whatever he could and disappear to somewhere with weak extradition treaties. The crash ruined everything for him. His injuries were bad enough that he needed round-the-clock care for the first 2 months. Hard to disappear when you can barely stand. Hard to access your hidden accounts when your wife's attorney has frozen everything pending forensic accounting. Lucia got the house, primary custody of the kids, a judgment for back support that Graham would be paying for the next 16 years. His real estate company officially dissolved. His professional reputation was toast. Commercial real estate is a small world. Nobody wanted to work with the guy who ran a financial scam on his own brother-in-law while sleeping with his wife's sister. Graham moved in with his mother. Last I heard, he was doing basic paperwork at a friend's property management company from a wheelchair. Both divorces finalized the same week. Mine on Tuesday, Lucia's on Friday. I kept my house, my retirement, my sanity. Celeste got her share of our joint accounts minus fraud offsets. Moved back in with her parents permanently after getting let go from her pharmaceutical job during her extended medical leave. Zach came over the day my divorce was finalized, brought food, helped me rearrange furniture. 6 months after the accident, I decided to have some people over. Saturday afternoon, burgers on the grill. Lucia was coming with the kids. Zach was bringing his girlfriend. Gene said he might stop by if his back wasn't giving him trouble. The house looked different now. I'd repainted the bedroom, bought new furniture for the living room, took down the wedding photos. It finally felt like mine again. Lucia arrived around 3 with the girls. They ran straight for the backyard while Lucia helped me set up the food table. We talked about normal stuff, the kids' summer camp plans, how weird it was to be single again after so many years. We'd developed a strange kind of friendship over the past months. Just 2 people who understood what the other had been through in ways nobody else could. Zach showed up around 4 with his girlfriend and a cooler of sodas. Gene wandered over around 5, said his back was fine actually, and parked himself in a lawn chair with a burger and a satisfied look. It was nice, quiet, the kind of afternoon I hadn't had in years. Around 6, I noticed Gene looking toward the front of the house with his eyebrows raised. I followed his gaze. Celeste was walking up the driveway. She looked different, thinner, harder around the eyes, walking with a slight limp from the accident that probably wasn't going away. She was carrying a manila folder and wearing a dress I didn't recognize. I handed my spatula to Zach and walked around to intercept her before she could reach the backyard. She stopped about 15 feet away when she saw me coming. I've been trying to get a hold of you for 3 weeks. Her voice was steady, practiced, like she'd rehearsed this. You blocked my number. You blocked my email. You won't respond to anything. Because we're divorced. There's nothing to talk about. I disagree. My new attorney found problems with the property ruling. There are grounds to revisit the asset division. The fraud claims were exaggerated, and I was never given a fair chance to. Celeste! I cut her off. Pete already told me about your appeal attempt. It was denied. There's nothing to revisit. This is over. You need to leave. I'm not leaving until you hear me out. You owe me that much after 6 years together. I don't owe you anything. Turn around and walk away, or I'm calling the cops. Her expression shifted. You're really going to play victim here? After everything you did? You blindsided me in a hospital bed. You turned my sister against me. You took everything and left me with nothing. You were planning to take $85,000 from my inheritance. You packed your bag to go sleep with Lucia's husband. You spent 7 months lying to my face. Everything that happened to you, you did to yourself. That's when she noticed the people in the backyard. Noticed Lucia standing near the grill, watching. Something ugly crossed her face. You've got to be kidding me. Her voice got loud. She's here? In my grandmother-in-law's house? With my nieces? You're playing happy family with the people who ruined my life? Your life was ruined by your own choices. Leave now. Last warning. She started walking toward the backyard. I stepped in front of her. Move. She was practically spitting the word. No. Those are my nieces. I have every right to see them. You can't keep them from me forever. This is so messed up. This is my property and you're trespassing. Gene. Gene already had his phone out. Already on it. Celeste lost it. She started screaming about her rights, about how I couldn't do this to her, about how this house was supposed to be hers. She grabbed my arm hard. When I pulled away, she shoved me. Then she grabbed a garden stake from near the fence and threw it at the back door. Missed, but it left a gouge in the siding. Celeste went back and forth between screaming at me, screaming at Lucia through the fence, and trying to push past me toward the backyard. Zach had already moved the kids into the garage, out of sight. Jean was on the phone with dispatch. When the patrol car pulled up, Celeste was sitting on the ground near the driveway, makeup running down her face, mumbling about how everyone had betrayed her. The officer checked out the scene quickly, took statements from me and Jean, asked Celeste to stand and provide identification. She refused, said she had rights. The officer asked me to clarify. I told him we'd been divorced for 2 months and she'd been served a formal no trespass order through the sheriff's office after multiple documented violations. He turned back to Celeste and asked her politely to leave the property. She refused again, started yelling about lawyers and lawsuits and how everyone was going to pay for what they'd done to her. The officer warned her that refusing to leave private property after being asked by the owner was criminal trespass under state law. She called him a name I won't repeat. He cuffed her, put her in the back of the patrol car. As they drove away, Celeste was still yelling through the window. Something about how I'd regret this, how she'd make me pay, how this wasn't over. I watched until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Then I walked back to the grill, took the spatula from Zach, and asked if anyone needed a refill on their soda. Zach raised his cup. Lucia laughed for the first time all day. Jean said that was the most excitement he'd had in years. We finished dinner as the sun went down. Lucia left around 8 with the girls asleep in the back seat. Zach and his girlfriend headed out shortly after. Jean walked back to his place, said he'd send over the camera footage in case I needed it for court. I sat on my back porch alone as the last light faded. The house was quiet, something that actually felt like home. Some people survive car crashes. I survived a marriage to someone I never really knew. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true. My wife looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You don't get a say in my friendships." 3 weeks later, she was crying that I filed for divorce. But I was already gone. All right, Reddit, buckle up because this one's a doozy. My wife joined some empowerment circle that turned her into a completely different person. She started coming home at 2 a.m., smelling like someone else's cologne, lying about where she was, and telling me I was controlling for asking basic questions. So when she asked her toxic friends if she should even stay married to me, I answered for her. Here's what went down. I, 34 male, work as a financial analyst for a regional investment firm here in Columbus. Been grinding at this career for about 12 years now, worked my way up from entry-level number cruncher to senior analyst. The job pays well, keeps me busy, and honestly, I'm good at it. Numbers make sense to me. They don't lie. They don't manipulate. They don't tell you one thing and mean another. People? Not so much, apparently. My wife Megan, 32 female, and I got married 9 years ago. Met her at a friend's birthday party back when we were both in our early 20s. She was sharp, funny, had this confidence that drew me in immediately. We dated for 2 years before I proposed, then spent another year planning the wedding. Everything felt right. We bought a house together 5 years ago. Nothing fancy but ours. Colonial style in a decent neighborhood, the kind of place where you wave at neighbors and they actually wave back. White picket fence energy, you know the vibe. For most of those 9 years, things were good. We had our routines. Tuesday nights were takeout Chinese from this place downtown we both loved. We'd sit at the kitchen table, eat straight from the cartons, and talk about our days. Weekends were lazy mornings, coffee on the back porch, and errands in the afternoon. We weren't the most exciting couple, but we were solid, stable. At least I thought we were. Looking back, I should have seen the signs earlier. But when you're in a marriage, you make excuses. You assume the best. You tell yourself it's just a rough patch. You convince yourself that the woman you married is still in there somewhere, even when the evidence says otherwise. The whole mess started about 4 weeks before everything exploded. Megan came home from work one Tuesday, buzzing with excitement about this new group she'd found through social media. Called it the Columbus Women's Empowerment Circle. Women supporting women, she said. A safe space to talk about real issues without judgment. At first, it seemed harmless. Coffee meetups on Saturday mornings, book discussions on Wednesday evenings. She'd come home energized, talking about how refreshing it was to connect with women who understood her. I was happy she had something outside of work and our routine. Everyone needs friends. Everyone needs community. I wasn't about to be that guy who complained about his wife having a social life, but then the meetings started getting more frequent. 3 times a week, then 4. The evening meetups started lasting later. 11 at night, midnight, then 2 in the morning on a work night. And her vocabulary changed in ways that felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script someone else had written. Suddenly, everything I did was toxic masculinity. Every question I asked was emotional labor I was unfairly demanding. Every concern I expressed was me trying to reclaim my power over her. The woman I married didn't talk like this. She'd always been direct, practical, straightforward. These were someone else's words coming out of her mouth, and I started to wonder whose. The leader of this group was a woman named Simone, divorced at 27, never remarried, and from what I could tell from her social media presence, she seemed to collect married women as followers like trading cards. Her feed was full of quotes about knowing your worth and refusing to settle and breaking free from the chains of expectations. All very inspirational if you didn't notice that every one of her relationships had crashed and burned spectacularly. Then there was Jade, who had 2 kids with 2 different fathers and couldn't understand why neither man wanted to stay involved in her life. She posted constantly about being a strong, independent mother, while simultaneously blasting the fathers of her children for not stepping up. The cognitive dissonance was impressive, and Wendy, who was on her 3rd engagement and worked in some pyramid scheme selling essential oils or supplements or whatever the newest scam was, she'd post about building her empire while simultaneously asking to borrow money from friends because she'd invested her savings into inventory that wasn't moving. 3 divorces between the 3 of them, 4 kids with absent fathers, 7 failed jobs in the past year, multiple bankruptcies, evictions, and restraining orders if you dug deep enough. But apparently, these were the women my wife of 9 years had chosen as her life advisors. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I first mentioned that these new friends seemed to have a lot of drama in their lives, Megan's response was immediate and sharp. The defensiveness came so fast it felt practiced. "You don't get to choose my friends anymore," she said. "I'm not choosing anything," I replied. "I'm just pointing out that every conversation you have with them ends with you being angry at me for something I didn't even know I did. That's because you don't understand female friendship. We support each other. We validate each other's experiences. We don't judge each other's choices." But the support seemed one-directional. Simone posted constantly on social media about her situationship with some married professor at the university. Jade shared screenshots of texts from her children's fathers, calling them deadbeats while collecting child support from both. Wendy documented each new multi-level marketing scheme with the same enthusiasm, never acknowledging the previous failures that had left her in debt. These were the women teaching my wife about healthy relationships. These were the voices she trusted more than mine. One Tuesday evening in March, everything came to a head. We were eating takeout Chinese from the cartons, something we used to do every week back when things were simple. Back when we actually enjoyed each other's company. Back when a Tuesday night meant connection instead of conflict. I set down my fork slowly and studied her face. Megan had changed over the past few weeks. New jewelry I'd never seen before, a sharpness in her eyes that hadn't been there a month ago. The way she held her chin up like she was bracing for a fight before I'd even said anything. Her whole posture had shifted from partner to adversary. I'm not trying to control who you spend time with, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm just wondering why you need to go out 3 times this week. Because I want to, she crossed her arms. Because these are my friends and we support each other. We don't judge each other's choices. Unlike some people, the irony of her judging me while talking about not judging wasn't lost on me. But I kept that observation to myself. I'd learned that pointing out contradictions only made things worse. So when I ask where you're going at 10 at night, that's me trying to control you? Her face flushed red. Yes, it is. I'm an adult. I don't need permission to leave my own house. I don't need to report my movements to you like you're my parole officer. I never said you needed permission. I asked because I care about your safety. You're driving home at 2 in the morning on dark roads. That's not controlling. That's concerned. She stood up from the table, her chair scraping against the floor. This is exactly what they said you'd do. Turn it around and make me feel guilty for wanting independence. Make yourself the victim when I'm the one being suffocated. They, the women from her empowerment circle, the ones who'd never met me but apparently had me all figured out. Independence is fine, I said carefully. But when your independence includes coming home at 2 in the morning, smelling like cigarettes and someone else's cologne, maybe we should talk about what's actually going on. Maybe, she said, her voice dropping to something cold and final. I don't owe you explanations anymore. Maybe I've been living my life according to what you think is appropriate for too long. Maybe I've been putting your needs before mine for 9 years, and I'm finally learning that I matter too. The kitchen went quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at her, really looked at her. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't even the woman from 6 months ago. Something fundamental had shifted, and I was only now seeing how far the damage had spread. All right, I said finally. You're absolutely right. Your friendships are your choice. Your decisions are your choice. I can't stop you from making them. She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. She'd been braced for an argument, and my agreement threw her off balance. Good. Finally. And since we're talking about choices, I've got some of my own to make. The confidence in her expression flickered for just a second. What's that supposed to mean? I stood up and started clearing the dishes. It means if you want complete independence in your choices, then I get the same independence in mine. Fair is fair. You can't have it both ways. She followed me to the sink. Don't be dramatic. This is about friendship, not our marriage. Is it? I turned to face her. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're getting life advice from women who can't maintain their own relationships. Women who've left a trail of broken families and empty bank accounts everywhere they go. And you're treating their opinions like gospel. Her eyes narrowed. Don't you dare insult my friends. I'm not insulting anyone. I'm making an observation based on publicly available information. But you're right. It's not my place to judge. Your choices are personal. The way I said personal made her pause. She wasn't stupid. She could hear the shift in my tone. Could sense that something had changed in me too. What are you planning? She asked. Nothing dramatic. Just exercising my own right to personal choices. She stared at me for a long moment, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I wasn't. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt clear. Certain. The fog of hoping things would get better had finally lifted. Good, she said finally, turning away. Maybe now you'll understand what independence actually means. Oh, I replied quietly. I'm about to understand it very well. 3 days after our kitchen confrontation, I did what any reasonable person would do when their spouse suddenly starts taking life advice from strangers. I got curious about who these people actually were. I started digging. It took me about 20 minutes on social media to find the group. Amazing how much people share when they think nobody's paying attention. The profile was semi-public, visible enough to see the dynamics at play, open enough to confirm every suspicion I'd been harboring. The feed was filled with smoothies captioned Self-Care Sunday and quotes about leaving dead weight behind, photos from bars with hashtags like Freedom Feels and No Apologies and Living My Truth. The comment section was a constant stream of members bashing their partners, cheering each other on for increasingly questionable behavior, celebrating boundary violations as growth. One post caught my attention. It was from 2 Saturdays ago, posted at 2 in the morning. A group photo at some uptown lounge. Megan was clearly visible, laughing, leaning against some guy I'd never seen before. Her hand was on his arm in a way that didn't read as casual. Her comment read, "Best night ever, finally feeling alive." The problem was, she told me she was at Simone's apartment watching movies, said they'd had a quiet night in, said she'd lost track of time, and that's why she got home so late. I screenshotted everything. Call it paranoia or preparation. But something told me I'd need documentation. My analyst brain was kicking in, treating this like any other problem that needed data to solve. That evening, Megan came home later than usual, humming to herself. She seemed lighter, happier, but the happiness wasn't directed at me. "Good day?" I asked from the couch. "Great day. We had lunch after work to plan this weekend." "Plan what?" She kicked off her heels and stretched. "Just girl time. You wouldn't understand. It's a female bonding thing. Try me. We're thinking about doing a wellness retreat. Get away for a few days. Reconnect with ourselves. Adults only resort. Spa treatments. Meditation classes. The works. Wellness retreat with women who collected married men like trading cards. Spa treatments at an adults only resort. The red flags were piling up so fast I could barely count them. "Sounds expensive," I observed. "It is. But we all decided we deserve it." She paused in the doorway. "When's the last time you spent money on something that made you happy? You're always so focused on saving and investing and planning for the future. Sometimes you need to live in the present." Interesting question, considering I'd spent my lunch hour researching divorce attorneys. Turns out living in the present meant different things to different people. "You're right," I said. "Maybe it's time I started investing in my own happiness, too." She paused, something in my tone catching her attention. She studied my face like she was looking for clues. "What kind of investment?" "Personal choices, remember? I'm sure you'll understand." I called my old college friend Connor that night. He was an attorney in Cleveland, and while he didn't practice family law, he'd know who to call. We'd been roommates freshman year, stayed close ever since. He was the kind of friend who showed up when things got hard. "Nate, hey, what's going on? I need some information. Hypothetically, how does divorce work in Ohio?" There was a pause. A long one. "This about Megan?" "Just information for now." Connor sighed. "Ohio's a no-fault state. Means you don't need to prove wrongdoing. Just that the marriage is irretrievably broken. Usually takes a few months if it's uncontested. Longer if it gets ugly." "Why? What's happening?" I gave him the abbreviated version. The new friends, the late nights, the lies about where she was, the weekend retreat that was being planned, the cologne that wasn't mine. "Man," Connor said when I finished. "Look, I know a guy in Columbus, Harold Sterling. He's sharp, and he doesn't mess around. Handles high-conflict divorces, knows how to protect assets. Want me to send you his contact?" "Yeah, send it over." "You sure about this path? Once you start, it's hard to walk back. I've seen guys file and then regret it when things calm down. I'm not starting anything. I'm just gathering information, making personal choices." "All right, man. I'll text you his number. And Nate, document everything. Screenshots, dates, times, locations. If this goes sideways, you'll want a paper trail." "Already am." Thursday evening, I tried one more time to reach her. Really reach her. Not just exchange accusations across battle lines. Give her one more chance to be honest. She came home at 6, earlier than usual. I took it as a sign. Maybe a good one. "Can we talk? About us?" Her guard went up immediately. I could see the walls going up behind her eyes. "What about us? I feel like we're disconnected. When did we stop being a team? When did we stop being partners?" She set down her purse slowly. "Maybe we were never a team? Maybe I was just following your lead this whole time. Maybe I was just playing a role you wanted me to play. Is there someone else?" The question came out before I could stop it. The one question I'd been avoiding because I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Why do men always jump to that? She shook her head. "This is about me finding me, not about replacing you with someone else. Not everything is about you, Nate. Then help me understand what's happening. Because from where I sit, my wife is staying out until 2 in the morning, lying about where she's been, and getting life advice from women whose lives are falling apart. Something doesn't add up. You don't know them. I know what they post online. I know their track record. 3 divorces between the 3 of them. 4 kids with absent fathers. Multiple failed businesses and broken relationships. But sure, they're qualified to tell you how to live your life. They understand me. They see me. Something you stopped doing a long time ago. They're using you to validate their own choices. They need you to fail so they don't feel so bad about failing themselves. That's not friendship. That's recruitment." Megan's face went red. "Get out. This is my house, too." "Then I'm leaving." She grabbed her purse and headed for the stairs. I heard her on the phone immediately, her voice carrying down through the vents, not even trying to be quiet. "He's starting to suspect," she said to whoever was on the other end. "No, I didn't tell him anything. This weekend will be perfect timing." Perfect timing for what? I wondered. But I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. Friday afternoon, Megan came downstairs with a weekend bag already packed. She bought new clothes, I noticed. expensive ones I'd never seen before. And the bag itself was new. Designer label? Not cheap. The group is doing a wellness retreat in Cincinnati, she announced. Leaving after work. Back Sunday evening. I looked up from my coffee. Cincinnati in March. It'll be chilly. We're staying at the Suites Hotel with spa access. Very exclusive. Very nice. I nodded slowly, noticing the new lingerie visible in her half-open bag. Tag still on. The kind of underwear she hadn't worn for me in months. Maybe longer. I already requested the time off work, she continued. This isn't a discussion. This isn't me asking for permission. You're absolutely right, I said. Your choices are personal. Have a good time. She studied my face, looking for signs of the argument she expected. When she didn't find any, she seemed almost disappointed, almost suspicious. You're really okay with this? I met her eyes directly. You said I don't get a say. I'm respecting that. Oh, she picked up her bag. Well, good. Simone picked her up at 5. I watched from the window as all 4 women piled into the car, already laughing before they'd even left the driveway. Megan didn't look back at the house once. Didn't wave, didn't hesitate, just climbed in and closed the door on 9 years of marriage like it was nothing. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, I went into motion. The fog lifted. The waiting was over. First call was to Harold Sterling, the attorney Connor had recommended. I left a message requesting a Monday morning appointment, explained the situation briefly, said I needed to move fast. Then I started documenting. I photographed every room in our house, every piece of furniture we'd bought together, every appliance, every detail of our shared life. Timestamp everything. Create a record. I pulled copies of our financial records, our marriage license, insurance documents, investment statements. I organized all the screenshots from social media into a folder with dates and timestamps. Built a timeline of lies. Next came the practical matters. I opened my laptop and transferred half our joint savings into a new personal account. $18,400. Exactly half. Not a penny more. Clean and fair. Then I started packing 2 suitcases with essentials. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, things I'd need if I wasn't coming back. My younger brother Trevor lived in Indianapolis, about 3 hours away. I called him. Hey, Nate, what's up? Can I stay with you for a few days? Maybe longer? Silence. Trevor knew me well enough to read between the lines. What happened? I'm done, Trevor. She's in Cincinnati this weekend with her group, probably doing exactly what I think she's doing. I'm filing Monday. Man, are you sure? This is serious. I'm sure. 9 years or not, I'm done being the safety net while she tests the waters. All right. Guest room's yours as long as you need it. Drive safe. Thanks, brother. I owe you. I loaded my car that evening. 2 suitcases, my laptop, the folder of evidence, a few personal items with sentimental value. I left everything else behind. Furniture, decorations, wedding photos, things we'd accumulated together that suddenly felt like props in a play I was no longer performing in. Before I left, I walked through the house one more time. Kitchen, where we'd had our last real conversation. Living room, where we used to watch movies on Sunday nights. Bedroom, where she'd stopped reaching for me months ago. Every room held a memory of who we used to be. None of them held who we'd become. I locked the door behind me, put my key under the mat, and drove to Indianapolis. 3 hours of dark highway and country radio stations. Time to think, time to process. By the time I pulled into Trevor's driveway at 11, I felt lighter than I had in months. Trevor met me at the door with coffee and a spare key. You look tired, he said. I feel free. That's not the same thing. No, but it's better. Saturday morning, while Megan was presumably enjoying her wellness retreat, I got confirmation of what I already suspected. Jade posted a story on social media. Just a quick video of the group at breakfast, captioned, "Living Our Best Lives." In the background, clear as day, was Megan sitting at a table with a man I didn't recognize. His hand was on her knee. She was laughing at something he'd said. I screenshotted it before Jade took it down 20 minutes later, added it to the folder. Then Wendy posted a photo of the hotel pool. Megan was in it, wearing a bikini I'd never seen. The same man was in the frame, arm around her shoulder. Caption, "Sunshine and good vibes only." That one stayed up for an hour before someone must have reminded her that Megan was technically still married. I forwarded both screenshots to Harold's office email with a note. More evidence for Monday's meeting. Saturday afternoon, I drove around Indianapolis with Trevor, looking at apartments. Nothing serious yet, just getting a feel for the market. 3 bedrooms in Broad Ripple, a loft downtown near the canal, a quiet 1-bedroom in Carmel with a balcony overlooking a park. You thinking about moving here permanently? Trevor asked. Maybe. Or maybe I'll stay in Columbus. Haven't decided yet. Just keeping my options open. You're handling this better than I expected. I've had time to process. When your wife tells you to your face that you don't get a say in her friendships, you start preparing for what comes next. Sunday evening, I got a text from Megan. Coming home late, long drive, don't wait up. I replied, take your time. I'm not there anyway. Her response came fast. What? Where are you? Made some personal choices. We'll talk when you're ready. She called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Same result. Third time, she left a message. Nate, what is going on? Are you at your brother's? Are you having some kind of breakdown? This isn't like you. Breakdown. Interesting word choice from someone who just spent the weekend with another man at a hotel while wearing her wedding ring. But sure, I was the one having a breakdown. I texted back, we'll talk Monday after my meeting. The calls kept coming. 17 more that night. I silenced my phone and went to sleep. Monday morning, I sat across from Harold Sterling in his downtown Columbus office. I'd driven back early, stopping at a diner for breakfast and a clear head before the meeting. Harold was in his 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of calm demeanor that suggested he'd seen it all before. I handed him the folder, every screenshot, every lie documented, every photo from the Cincinnati weekend, the timeline of behavior changes, the financial records, everything. He flipped through it methodically, his expression unchanging. This is thorough, he said finally. You've done good work here. I wanted to make sure there was no ambiguity. There isn't. Ohio's no fault, so technically you don't need any of this to file. But if she contests or tries to paint you as the bad guy, this documentation will be valuable. What's the process from here? I file the petition today. She gets served within 72 hours. After that, it depends on whether she cooperates or fights. Based on what you've shown me, my guess is she'll fight at first, then realize she's got nothing to stand on. How long until it's final? If she cooperates, could be done in 90 days. If she fights, 6 months to a year. Whatever it takes. I'm not going back. Harold nodded. I'll have the papers ready this afternoon. One question. How do you want her served? At her office. Tuesday if possible. Consider it done. Megan got served at her accounting firm on Tuesday afternoon. I know, because my phone exploded with calls and texts immediately after. 37 messages. 22 voicemails. All variations of, how could you do this? And you're being unreasonable, and this is a mistake you'll regret. I responded to none of them. Then her sister called. I didn't answer. Then her best friend from college called. Same result. Then came the tearful voicemail at 3 a.m. Nate, please. I know I made mistakes. We can work through this. I'll stop seeing the group. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't throw away 9 years. Please. Whatever I want. Funny how whatever you want becomes an option only after consequences arrive. Wednesday? Her mother called. I actually answered that one. Nate, what's happening? Megan is devastated. She says you filed for divorce without any warning. Mrs. Patterson, did she tell you about Cincinnati? Silence. Did she tell you about the man at the hotel? The photos? The new lingerie? The wellness retreat that was actually a romantic getaway with someone she met through her empowerment group? Longer silence. She didn't, I continued. I didn't think so. Maybe ask her about that before you call me again. Nate, I had no idea. No one ever does until they do. 2 days later, I got a text from Megan's mother. I've seen the photos. I owe you an apology. I had no idea what she was doing. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Thursday, Megan showed up at my office. Building security called me to ask if I wanted to see her. I said no. 20 minutes later, they called again to say she was still in the lobby, crying. I told them to ask her to leave, or they'd need to call the police. She left. Friday, she tried a different approach. Showed up at Trevor's apartment in Indianapolis. How she got the address, I have no idea. Maybe she tracked my phone before I removed her from the plan. Maybe she called around to mutual friends. Either way, there she was on Trevor's doorstep at 7 a.m, mascara running, begging to talk. I was in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Trevor looked through the peephole and turned to me with raised eyebrows. It's her. Don't let her in. Wasn't planning on it. Trevor handled it. He doesn't want to see you, he said through the barely open door. I just need 5 minutes. Please, let him know I'm here. He knows. The answer is still no. This is between me and my husband. He's not your husband anymore. He filed. You got served. That's how it works. He's making a mistake. 9 years, Trevor. 9 years doesn't mean anything to him? You should have thought about that in Cincinnati. That landed. Through the crack in the door, I could see her face crumble. He told you? He showed me the photos. The ones Jade and Wendy were kind enough to post online. Real subtle, by the way. Those were taken out of context. Sure they were. You should go. She didn't go. She sat on the front steps for 2 hours. I watched from the window as she cycled through crying, texting furiously, making phone calls, and staring at the door like she could will it to open. At one point, she tried knocking again. Trevor ignored it. Eventually, she started pacing the driveway. A neighbor walked by with their dog and gave her a concerned look. Megan tried to wave like everything was normal, but her red eyes and shaking hands gave her away. 2 hours in, Trevor finally called the non-emergency police line and asked for advice. An officer came out 20 minutes later, spoke with her gently, and eventually convinced her to leave. She argued at first, said she had every right to be there, said she just wanted to talk to her husband. The officer explained calmly that she was on private property, and the residents had asked her to leave. She drove back to Columbus that night. I know because she texted me at midnight. I can't believe you had the cops called on me. I replied, I can't believe you showed up uninvited at my brother's house after what you did. We're even. She didn't respond. The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, housing arrangements, and rebuilding. I found a one-bedroom condo in Columbus's Short North neighborhood. Clean lines, modern kitchen, balcony with a view of the city. Half the space of the house Megan and I had shared, but entirely mine. Work became an anchor. My boss noticed the divorce but handled it professionally. Extra projects to keep me busy. A promotion track that suddenly seemed more achievable without the drama at home weighing me down. Trevor came up for a weekend to help me furnish the new place. We assembled IKEA furniture, ordered pizza, watched basketball until 2 in the morning. My first real weekend in months without checking my phone every 5 minutes to see where my wife claimed to be. You seem good, Trevor said during a commercial break. I feel good. Better than I have in months. You're not second-guessing anything? Not for a second. Should have done it sooner. Meanwhile, Megan's world continued its slow-motion collapse. Frank, her boss at the accounting firm, called me 2 weeks after I filed. Nate, I'm calling as a courtesy. Megan's performance has declined significantly. She's missed 3 days this week, and today she broke down crying in a client meeting. I appreciate you telling me, Frank, but that's not my concern anymore. I know something's going on. She's told people here you filed for divorce. Is there any chance of reconciliation? The divorce is proceeding. What she does with her career is her choice. Understood. I had to ask. A week later, I heard through mutual friends that Megan had been put on performance improvement at work. 2 weeks after that, she quit before they could fire her. Walked out in the middle of a Tuesday, apparently. Just packed her desk and left. The empowerment circle imploded spectacularly over the next month. Simone's married professor got caught when his wife found their messages. She'd been suspicious for months, finally hired someone to pull phone records. The messages were bad, really bad. Explicit photos, plans to leave their spouses, promises of a future together that neither of them was willing to actually build. The professor got suspended pending a disciplinary hearing. His university issued a statement about conduct unbecoming of a faculty member. His wife filed for divorce and named Simone in the proceedings as a contributing factor. But it got worse for Simone. The professor's wife went nuclear. She compiled every screenshot, every photo, every love note, and shared them with Simone's employer. Simone worked at a PR firm downtown, the kind of place that couldn't afford association with scandal. They let her go within a week. Culture fit concerns, according to the official statement. Translation: we can't have our public relations specialist becoming a public relations nightmare. Her social media went silent overnight. Her last post before going dark was a single sentence. Sometimes you're the villain in someone else's story. Yeah, sometimes you are. Jade's situation was even messier. Both of her children's fathers independently filed for formal custody evaluations within 2 weeks of each other. Turns out they'd been talking, sharing notes, comparing horror stories. Her constant posting about her party lifestyle, the late nights, the rotating men in her life, all of it became documented evidence in court. Every Instagram story, every TikTok video, every Facebook post became a line item in a custody brief. The judge didn't love seeing photos of the primary caregiver doing shots at 2 a.m. while the kids were supposedly at grandma's house. Didn't love the video of Jade getting into a screaming match with a bouncer outside a club at 3 in the morning. Really didn't love the post where she called both fathers sperm donors who peaked in high school, while tagging them both. She lost primary custody of both kids within 2 months. Supervised visitation twice a week. The kind of outcome that makes you wonder why people share everything on the internet, like there are no consequences. Last I heard, she moved back in with her mother, was working at a grocery store, and had deleted every social media account she owned. Wendy's third fiancé called off their wedding after discovering the mountain of debt she'd hidden from him. $23,000 in credit card bills from failed MLM inventory she'd stashed in a storage unit. He found out because a collections agency called the house looking for her, and he did some digging. When he found the storage unit receipt, he drove over there and found boxes upon boxes of unsold supplements, essential oils, and wellness products that had been sitting untouched for months. Not only did he end the engagement, he also took back the car he'd co-signed for her, called her parents to explain why, moved out of their shared apartment the same day. Her engagement ring showed up on Facebook Marketplace 3 days later, priced at a fraction of what it was worth. Nobody bought it. Her final public post was an apology for encouraging behaviors I had no business encouraging. She specifically mentioned Megan by name. I told her things about marriage and relationships that I had no right to say. I was wrong. I'm sorry. The Columbus Women's Empowerment Circle disbanded quietly. No final post, no explanation. Just gone, like it had never existed. The social media pages were deleted. The group chat apparently exploded into finger-pointing and blame. 3 friendships that had been ride or die suddenly became every woman for herself. Megan posted her own statement a month after I filed. I destroyed my marriage by listening to people who couldn't maintain their own relationships. I take full responsibility for my actions. The women I thought were supporting me were actually pulling me down with them. To anyone who's been hurt by my choices, I'm sorry. To my husband, who deserved better than what I gave him, I'm sorry. To myself, for losing everything I had, I'm sorry. The comments flooded in. Some supportive, many critical. One stood out. We tried to warn you. You called us jealous. Hope you learned something. She didn't respond to any of them. 2 months after I filed, Megan asked to meet in person. I agreed, choosing a coffee shop in Westerville. Neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, 15 minutes early. She looked smaller than I remembered, thinner, dark circles under her eyes that even makeup couldn't hide. The confidence that had drawn me to her a decade ago was completely gone. Thank you for meeting me, she said. What do you need? I fired my attorney. I'm not fighting the divorce anymore. You can have whatever you want. The house, the savings, everything. I don't want everything. I want fair. Then fair. Whatever you decide is fair. House gets sold. We split proceeds. Standard division of everything else. That's fair. She nodded, staring at her untouched coffee. Simone's life is ruined, she said quietly. Jade lost her kids. Wendy's alone and in debt. Everyone from the group, their lives just fell apart. Including yours. Including mine. She looked up at me. I threw away everything for nothing. For women who didn't care about me at all. For a man whose name I can barely remember. You threw it away for the feeling of being free from consequences. I know. Good. Maybe the lesson sticks. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. What happens now? Now the lawyers handle the rest. We sign papers, we move on. And us? There is no us. There hasn't been for a while, I just didn't want to admit it. I stood up. Take care of yourself, Megan. Seriously, get your life together. But do it for you, not because you think it'll bring me back. I walked out into the spring sunlight and didn't look back. 3 months after I filed, we met at the Franklin County Courthouse for the final hearing. Brief, procedural. 11 minutes. 9 years reduced to a judge's signature and a stack of paperwork. The judge reviewed the papers. The marriage is hereby dissolved. Division of assets as agreed. That was it. Done. Outside the courthouse, Megan tried one more time. Can we at least be friends someday? I don't know. Maybe. But not now. Not for a long time. I walked to my car. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing alone on the courthouse steps as her mother's car pulled up to collect her. She climbed in without looking back. 6 months later, I barely recognized my own life. The condo was fully furnished. Art on the walls I'd picked out myself, not compromised on. A real kitchen setup I actually used, with cast iron pans I'd seasoned properly and a knife set that wasn't from a wedding registry. A balcony garden I'd started on a whim that now had tomatoes, basil, and peppers growing in neat rows. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.